Welcome back everyone. We are here live with theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, your host in Paris, France for the Raise Summit 2025. It's an international gathering of the industry around AI infrastructure, and of course, the customer value that's extracting out of that. Got George Kurian, he's the CEO of NetApp. George, great to see you.
Good to see you.
We just came back from one of your events. You got your big event coming up in the fall. We're at the midpoint of the year. It feels like a whole another year went by, so I feel like it's like a end of year review, but it's also mid-year review. So I want to get your thoughts on kind of what's happened in the first half of the year and where we are right now, because if you go back 12 months, there's so much change in the enterprise, in the industry, whether you're talking about the large hyperscalers or the emerging hyperscalers. There's a lot of specialty hyperscalers coming out, and the enterprise. Some are spending tons of money on CapEx. The enterprise, they don't have as much CapEx as some of the big cloud players, but they still have to invest. They got a lot of NetApp product and software in there. So you got the world is really investing, and it's a systems, I won't say reset, but it seems like a reset where the idea of a server, an attached storage, database, hyperconvergence was compute, networking, and storage. Now you got compute, networking, storage, HBM, high bandwidth memory, and databases, all in different kind of configurations. You have this kind of new systems view. Your business, very durable. NetApp has been a leader, God, since the 90s, okay, at storage, but now the data platforms are critical, horizontal layer for those vertical applications where the business logic is. So like you're in the prime real estate position in the stack and in the chips.
Correct.
Give us an update, because like, first of all, is that accurate? Do you agree? Or what, because it seems to be that's where the action always is.
Yeah, thank you for having me. You know, we have done extraordinarily well over the last few years. We have the data infrastructure that both the enterprises and the cloud providers that want to serve the enterprises deploy. We are the #1 share provider in high performance storage. We have the world's most widely deployed data infrastructure platform, because we're not only deployed in the enterprise, but also in all of the data centers of the hyperscalers, plus the large number of the sovereign cloud providers, including most of the French sovereign cloud providers. What we are focused on is to allow our clients to use their data with the AI tool chains that are getting built. And I think that what we have seen over the last year is the core technologies, meaning chips plus foundation models, are getting better. And now people want to apply those technologies to their business problems. And without data, those technologies are not relevant to the enterprise. And so that's what we're focused on.
Yeah, and another thing I'll just throw out there, I'd love to get your thoughts on and reaction, is that, there's so much change. You mentioned some of the advancements, but change management, I'll put quotes around, has been one of those things that's correct. IT transformation. We saw IT transform, digital transformation. Now you have business model transformation. So you have change management, again, at the center of the action. So that's people. Correct. People, process, technology, whatever the cliche is. But change is happening, technically, business-wise, but the processes have to change. So now, okay, I have a lot of NetApp in my environment, I'm an enterprise. What do I do with it? Now I got startups coming in with all kinds of new software stacks. I got to scale horizontally, on-prem. A lot of on-prem activity where the IP is, the data. So you got a lot of change management. Your customers are changing. How are you guys engaging with your customers? What specifically is working? We're seeing a lot of POCs kind of backlogging on the large enterprises. Sovereign Cloud, we'll get to in a second, but I want to talk about the enterprise specifically. Yeah. This is a huge opportunity because there's demand for production.
Correct, and I think, maybe I'll start with the end, which is how do you take an application from a proof of concept to production? And the end state of successfully implementing AI in the enterprise is to realize the productivity gains or the growth opportunities that AI creates. And I think, as you mentioned, it's a big people management and change management, topic. I think that while many people say that AI will replace humans or augment humans, what we see is AI will sharply focus the strengths of your organization or the weaknesses. If, for example, you don't have a culture where employees feel safe and trusted and have the opportunity to learn and make mistakes, you're going to fall behind dramatically in the AI, evolution, because a core part of how we see organizations succeed is to enable your employees to try out new experiments and to actually reimagine the frontline work, right?
Yeah.
We have deployed AI very, very successfully in our product development organization. And a big part of it was to make it safe for employees to try things, make mistakes, and iteratively learn. And so that's one of the topics which I'm talking about. The second is to accelerate adoption, you need to be able to create an AI center of excellence that has a set of consistent patterns for both systems as well as reusable technologies, right? That have passed your compliance, your security, the various governance requirements of your organization. We are a part of hundreds of those centers of excellence and AI platforms in the enterprise.
I think you bring up a great point. I want to double click on that because these centers of excellence are very relevant. We're seeing that in our reporting, and we talk to a lot of practitioners every day on theCUBE, and this is a trend. And I'm going to put a caveat on this because there's a lot of, I see two types of customer centers of excellence. Ones that are led by the CTO, they're really figuring things out. It almost is like they're trying to be like deep mind, but they're not like doing any models, but they have to figure the technology out, and it's really more of a change agent. It's usually like the third job of the CTO. And they want to get out of it as fast as possible, and then and make AI enabled and not to manage it. The other side is a very political organization, becomes very CIO-like, I have kingdom building. And that doesn't work very well because I think I'm seeing kind of like, I want to be the AI czar. Well, the best AI czars want to be out of the business because it's not a position, it's a mindset, it's a systems architecture. So what's your thoughts on that? I'm not saying you should weigh in on, because probably some of your customers doing that, but it's an approach. If the purpose of the customer center of excellence isn't to be like a customer briefing center. It's designed to be change driven, and it's like, your job's done, move on. Now maybe CISO gets some stuff, or maybe there's some organizational changes around what that does, but it isn't a department.
That's exactly right. For us it is very, very similar to how cloud started in the enterprise, where there were cloud centers of excellence. We saw the ones that were successful as an enabler, right? Meaning they built common templates, they built common tool chains, for example, the ability to understand where your assets were, to have common practices for FinOps and SecOps. But then they really enabled developer self-service and application self-service so that the lines of business could actually drive the transformation that cloud drove. One of the unique capabilities that we brought to the market was to bridge the divide between cloud environments and on-premises environments, particularly for the data, right? The operational systems were on-prem, the analytics systems were in the cloud, you needed to bridge that. And we see the same thing going on with AI. And so we see the enablers are the ones that are going to be successful.
That's interesting. I'll go back full circle to the beginning at the top of this interview. You're in a unique position.
Thank you.
Not only from an experience standpoint, you've seen the movie before, but a little bit different version. It's like a horror film on one hand and a love story on the other.
That's right.
Depending on what you're doing in it. You sit at the data layer, which is obviously where it's stored. Sovereign cloud is a big part of this, where you have data management, you got compliance, mostly governance stuff that's well understood, but the technology's changing. Most people don't think about marrying the technology change with the requirements of sovereignty. So it reminds me of security conversations back a couple of waves ago, where security had to be built in with the compliance in
That's
mind
correct.
from day one. Is the same thing happen with sovereignty, or are people thinking it that way? Am I getting it right? Are you have to think about the logic of the compliance and the technology integration, or build the stack and then figure it out, bolt it on later? It doesn't seem to work, because if an agent goes off the rails,
Right, that's exactly right.
what's your thoughts on sovereignty architecture thinking?
I think you're exactly right. You know, one of the things that we see is that to drive success with AI, especially most of the data in the enterprise is unstructured data, right? 80% roughly. And what LLMs have been able to do is help you derive insight from unstructured data. Most of the application tool chains that have historically been built, right, like data warehouses or BI tool chains and so on, only are focused on the structured data elements. And those were typically, hey, I will copy some form of data into a schema and then implement, policy. Our view is, and we are doing this and bringing this to market, is that to really scale the AI landscape from a systems architecture and business architecture perspective, you need to implement a lot of those capabilities right at the data infrastructure. So you need to be able to detect, malicious use or provide guardrails for data right where the data is and when the data is created rather than later. You need to be able to detect changes in the data so that you can create lineage of the data with the models so that your business process can operate in a closed loop. And that's why we are implementing a lot of those intelligent patterns in our data landscape. And sovereignty is an example of that, right? People say, I want to have my data within a controlled environment, and you can do that with us.
We had a capital markets conversation early this morning, and I said, always follow the money. That's always a cliche. Here, it's follow the data.
Correct.
And so, you have the data layers. What is NetApp doing? Because again, not everyone has the big CapEx budgets. The enterprises are, JP Morgan Chase has got a $17 billion IT budget, but that's not everyone's JP Morgan Chase. They have to spend wisely, so they don't have a lot of money. They have a lot of money, but they don't throw it at science projects. So in the re-architecture, price performance is huge. How are you guys helping customers with NetApp? What are some of the things that NetApp's doing to enable fast acceleration of the value of AI across the board? Is there certain things that's resonating right now with customers? I got my customer excellence center. Okay, great. How am I engaging with NetApp? What's your main driver right now for the business?
I think there's probably three things that have helped us, accelerate past everyone else in the market. We are number one and the fastest growing. Number one share and the fastest growing. And I would sort of point out three. One, from a system architecture perspective, as you said, the network fabrics are getting faster and faster, which allows you to build highly composable systems. And so we've built, a disaggregated architecture that allows you to pool gangs of compute with gangs of storage optimized across a network fabric, which allows you to have massive flexibility in terms of what type of application you're using and the price performance of the infrastructure. Second is the world is hybrid. Whether it's a sovereign cloud for certain clients, or whether it's a hyperscale cloud getting integrated into your data architecture, we are massively further ahead than anybody else in the industry. We have, for example, given our clients the opportunity to use public cloud tools like SageMaker or Vertex or OpenAI Studio in the cloud with full control of their data, which
on-prem data or on the cloud data?
On-prem data, and that we're seeing having massive adoption rates. We grew our cloud business 45% year on year, and we are deployed in all the hyperscale data centers in the world. And third is to be able to, as we have done through our history, use your data with the broadest range of applications. And so it allows us to integrate with new types of MLOps tool chains, AI toolchains from people like NVIDIA or the hyperscalers or sovereign providers like Vultr.
Yeah.
And what this gives our clients is the best return on investment on their data estate.
Yeah.
We manage it efficiently. We allow them to use it across a diverse range of application landscapes and get value through the application platforms.
Yeah, and I would just, the application market's going to explode. You mentioned hybrid. Okay, one of the things about data is you follow the data, you have to go to the edge. So now you got distributed computing, I just call it distributed computing.
That's right.
So that's the paradigm, but it's hybrid. Hybrid means on-prem, on cloud, edge is just another on-prem kind of concept, but it's all connected, it's all cloud, it's all operationally.
Correct.
Hybrid.
Correct.
So what is the edge? Because that's where data is going to reside too. That's got to be low latency, it's got to connect to the core or where the IP is, and it's got to be in that fabric close to the brain, if you will.
That's
the
right.
Processor, whatever, processing.
Correct.
And it's not one central, it could be distributed across a data center, multiple regions. I mean, that's a complicated architecture.
Absolutely.
How do you view that? How does NetApp think about that? And because our customers, are they there now, thinking through this?
They're working through it. I'll give you a real world example. We are working with one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world, where they have a huge amount of research data and clinical data. The research data is both in large data centers as well as in the cloud because they collaborate with university researchers and so on. The clinical data comes off of instruments in their own labs and at the edge. And what we are working on with the hyperscalers is to create one seamless data platform that has a common NetApp infrastructure across all these locations and a virtualized view of your data so that you as a researcher don't need to know where the underlying asset is. You can just access the data that you want and we will serve it up to you.
And it goes the other direction too.
Correct.
You have more connection points
Absolutely.
for more data, which feeds the AI.
Correct.
So that's
exactly
an example of an open architecture.
That's exactly right.
All right, great. So let's get into some of the business side. And you can comment or you can say in your own language or coded words. There's a lot of hype. We're the leader in data platforms. What's really storage? Unstructured data. You guys have experience with unstructured, structured data. How should customers squint through the hype? What would you say in terms of, you don't have to name names about competition because we don't do that on theCUBE, but like, how should a customer evaluate their partner when it comes to being a data platform that has experience in actual storage technology, because that is the key at the lower level. I mean, storage is moved down to lowest level. You mentioned fabrics. That's going to be kind of a big rack solution, or it could be distributed in a data center. If the power envelope is restricted, I mean, AI is bounded by power. So it might look different, customer to customer. That's storage. But the data layer, how should customers squint through the hype? Because they're making generational decisions right now.
Listen, I think that, you got to have a track record of serving the largest organizations in the world. AI, while it has some elements that have different system design, does not replace the fact that you need to be trusted, you need to have a track record of having delivered the most important data in the world. And we've done that. We proved ourselves in the cloud world, where we are the only provider in the world who has their technology embedded in Google, Amazon, and Microsoft's clouds. And what I tell our clients is, if the world's 3 largest technology companies choose one provider to embed our core technology in every single hyperscale data center, that's validation enough. I think with regard to the commentary you raised about, how does the data infrastructure evolve? Storage historically was about serving data. We, because of our heritage, unique heritage coming out of the technical computing landscape, implemented a lot of intelligence in that layer. Unlike block storage providers who just focused on serving data, we had intelligence built in. And so we are continuing to add to that pedigree with security, governance, access management, automated, data pipelines like vectorization of data, the ability to provide data lineage and, guardrails.
So you have a trajectory, you have economies of scale
Correct.
in making data intelligent.
Correct. That's right.
All right, so I have to ask you about, you're an event coming up, Insight 2025 in Las Vegas in October. What's your plans for the second half of the year with NetApp, your team? What's your focus? What are some of the customer conversations? Give a quick snapshot of what you're working on, what you're optimized for, and some of the dialogues that you've been having.
We have 4 focus conversations that we have with clients. The first is modernizing their data center architecture so that it is, agile and gives them flexibility in a very, very dynamic world. The second is, how do you implement cyber resilience at the data layer? Because ultimately the bad guys are not after your networks and they're not after your servers, they're really after your data, right? And so how do you do that? We have a lot of capabilities we've brought to market and continue to bring to market there. The third is, how do you truly scale hybrid cloud environments? Because as AI comes along, you need to be able to scale these, kind of hybrid data pipelines and so on. And the last is getting your data ready and useful for AI. And so you'll see us have big step forwards in each of these, and we're excited about the progress we're making.
I've been covering NetApp, knowing some of the early founders in the 90s, which makes me old, but I'm in my 50s, so I remember the days. I could say that when we started theCUBE, SiliconANGLE 16 years ago, I was in a room in Sunnyvale when you guys were doing Amazon when it was not fashionable, AWS.
Correct.
So it's not like you guys are new to the cloud game.
That's right.
So I've seen that progression, and you guys have continually innovated. NetApp is known for innovating, so I'll give you props on that. So just final question, what are you most excited about from an innovation standpoint? Because we are at again, it's a great opportunity for someone who has experience. There's a lot of hype out there, a lot of promises, and sometimes it looks good on paper and it performs well, but distributed computing, distributed data architectures are not easy. What are you most excited about if you had to kind of bumper sticker the NetApp innovation strategy formula right now?
I think we're most excited about being able to unlock the potential of the data for our clients' business, right? Because ultimately, if they succeed, we succeed. And so we are trying to translate with humility, with focus, with steady execution, a lot of the hype into actual real outcomes for our clients. One of the things that we have always talked about with our clients is you want to unify your data so that you have the most comprehensive view of any business problem and be able to then implement, connect that data to the application world that is evolving continuously. That paradigm that we pioneered over 30 years ago is absolutely more relevant today than it's ever been. And so we're excited for our clients and excited at the possibilities for our business.
I threw that 90s reference in there because one of the most popular quotes on theCUBE in the past 18 months is, it feels like the 90s, which was a boom in wealth creation and innovation around infrastructure. Open systems interconnect, connecting campuses with TCP IP, and then the computer revolution skyrocketed. We feel like we're in a 100x version of that now. I mean, it does. I mean, to me, it feels like. What about you? You feel like we're not 100x?
I think there's a lot of innovation happening. I think for me, I think you really have to realize the value of that innovation through real customer success and outcomes. And a big part of that is not the technology, right? It's enabling businesses and employees to be able to be more productive.
Yeah, I guess my final comment on that, since you brought it up, is that Dave Vellante and I always riff on our CUBE pod about repatriation. We're like, because we're like, no one's really repatriating, it's not a trend. It's retrofitting, but I think cloud growth is actually growing with AI, you're seeing that. But the on-prem is growing because I think customers are realizing my workflows and my process and my data is my intellectual property.
That's correct.
So now I'm going to take more of a storage focus around the business logic of why my data exists, and then map that to an architecture, which is you're pointing out.
Correct.
And I think that is the dynamic in the enterprise, when they say, that's our crown jewels. I mean,
That's
Cloudflare
exactly right.
just implemented a metering service because people are getting sucking all the IP out of their sites. So you're starting to see the recognition of intellectual property of the
exactly
data.
Right.
Are you hearing that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, there are two assets that every business has: their people and their data. And you know, I think that we've been privileged to help be a steward of one of those assets for a very, very long time.
George, great to have you on theCUBE. I know you got a keynote to go to. Thanks for spending the time. Great conversation. Great to have you on See at Insight in October, a big annual event. I'm John Furrier, host of theCUBE. We're here in Paris for extended coverage, team coverage with the NYC Wire. We're all here. Brought to you by Vultr. It wouldn't be possible without the generous support of Vultr. Thank you, the Vultr team, for making all this happen. Thanks for watching.